What happens when the world's strongest navy sails into the Caribbean, right up to Venezuela's doorstep? What happens when thousands of U.S. Marines gather at bases near the border, while the skies fill with American fighter jets circling like watchful hawks? And what happens when Caracas calls for Moscow's help, invoking a defense pact that could turn South America into the stage for a brand new Cold War? Let's be absolutely clear before we begin. This is analysis, not advocacy. We're not cheering for war. We're not calling for escalation. We are breaking down what it means when Washington flexes its muscles in the Western Hemisphere, and what happens when Russia tries to play the spoiler. Picture the scene. The Caribbean Sea churns under the wake of American carrier strike groups. U.S. destroyers, bristling with Aegis missile systems, cut through the waters. Submarines prowl silently below. Overhead, the unmistakable roar of F/A-18 Super Hornets and F-35 Lightning IIs fills the skies. Onshore, Marines unload equipment, their boots hitting the ground in bases just outside Venezuela's borders. It's not a rumor, not a drill. It's a full-scale show of force. And the question rings out: is this a deterrence maneuver, or the opening move of Cold War 2.0, this time in South America? For Washington, the message couldn't be clearer. The United States is not about to let instability, or Russian influence, take root in its own hemisphere. This is the Monroe Doctrine in 21st century form. If Russia thinks it can set up camp in Venezuela, America is more than ready to remind the world whose backyard this really is. On the Venezuelan side, the picture looks different. Caracas, facing the overwhelming presence of U.S. naval and air power, scrambles to invoke its strategic partnership with Russia. Requests go out for more military advisors, for S-400 air defense systems, for naval deployments that might signal Moscow's resolve. But here lies the obvious imbalance. Venezuela's navy is small, aging, and simply no match for an American carrier strike group. Even with Russian help, it would be like showing up to a heavyweight boxing match with a water pistol. Yes, Russia can deliver S-400 launchers and parade a few frigates, but can that really stand up against a U.S. carrier strike group armed with hundreds of missiles and squadrons of F-35s? Let's break it down more carefully. On the sea, the U.S. Navy remains unmatched. A single Gerald R. Ford-class aircraft carrier can deploy up to 75 aircraft, supported by cruisers, destroyers, and nuclear-powered submarines. The fleet isn't just about numbers. It's about global logistics, precision weapons, and the ability to fight anywhere, anytime. Compare that to Venezuela's modest fleet, a handful of patrol boats and frigates, some of which are decades old. Russia could try sending a few ships, perhaps a Yasin-class submarine or a Gorshkov-class frigate, but these would be tokens, not game-changers. In the skies, U.S. air dominance is absolute. F-35s provide stealth penetration. F/A-18s deliver versatility. Long-range bombers like the B-1B or even the B-2 could join if needed, flying in from continental bases. Venezuela's Air Force? Mostly Su-30 Mk2s, solid jets but lacking the stealth and avionics to face F-35s head-on. And let's not forget, stealth plus AWACS coordination means NATO pilots can see first, shoot first, and finish the fight before Venezuelan or Russian aircraft even know what's happening. On the ground, the U.S. Marines are the ultimate rapid response force. Light, fast, and deadly, equipped with Abrams tanks, HIMARS rocket systems, and armored vehicles, they can establish control quickly. Venezuela's ground forces are numerous but poorly equipped compared to NATO standards. Add in U.S. satellite intelligence, precision strikes, and logistics chains that stretch seamlessly from North America, and the balance is clear. It's like watching two teams line up, one with the NFL's best roster, the other borrowing players from the local high school. Brave? Maybe? Balanced? Not even close. Now, Russia. Moscow loves the theater of global power. It loves the symbolism of sending ships or bombers to faraway places. Remember when Russian Tu-160 Blackjack bombers landed in Venezuela in 2018? It made headlines. It looked dramatic. But strategically, it was theater, not transformation. Two bombers don't change the balance of power in the Caribbean. And everyone knows it. But here's the danger. Symbolism can still spark real escalation. If Russia decides to send S-400 air defense batteries, manned by Russian crews, suddenly U.S. pilots have to consider not just Venezuelan targets, but Russian ones. If a Russian frigate is parked off the Venezuelan coast and tensions flare, one miscalculation could escalate a local standoff into a global crisis. The real risk isn't that Venezuela defeats the U.S., it's that Russia's presence, however small, turns a regional clash into a superpower showdown. Let's look at possible scenarios. Scenario 1. Show of force, no shots fired. The U.S. Navy surrounds Venezuela, runs exercises, demonstrates dominance, and then pulls back. The message is sent, deterrence is reinforced, and Caracas is left rattled. Scenario 2. Limited skirmish. Venezuelan air defenses, perhaps with Russian guidance, fire on U.S. reconnaissance aircraft or drones. The U.S. responds with precision strikes on military bases. The conflict remains limited but highly dangerous. Scenario 3. Escalation by proxy. Russia sends more assets, maybe a submarine or bomber flights. The U.S. responds with reinforcements. The Caribbean becomes the hottest flashpoint since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And finally, Scenario 4. Global confrontation. The nightmare scenario. Miscalculation leads to direct U.S.-Russia engagement, raising nuclear warnings. Nobody wants this, but the risk exists when military forces come into close proximity under high tension. So what's the payoff? The United States has once again shown why its military is considered the global benchmark. Its ability to project power halfway across the world in days is unmatched. A carrier strike group here, a Marine battalion there. Washington can move the chess pieces faster than anyone else. Venezuela, even with Russian backing, cannot match that. Its best hope is to survive politically, not militarily. Russia, for its part, thrives on appearances, showing up just enough to look important, but never enough to actually tip the scales. It's like Russia bringing a megaphone to a gunfight, loud, attention-grabbing, but not exactly decisive. The larger story is this. The world may be witnessing the first sparks of a new Cold War in South America. America demonstrating that its reach is limitless. Russia trying to carve out influence far from its borders. Venezuela becoming the pawn on the chessboard of great power rivalry. And the rest of the world watching nervously, asking, is this deterrence or the beginning of something darker? So let's leave with a question. When U.S. carrier strike groups surround Venezuela and Russia talks of sending weapons in return, is this just political theater? Or are we watching the early moves of a second Cold War, this time played out under the Caribbean sun? What do you think? Could Russia truly intervene meaningfully in Venezuela? Or would it be little more than a symbolic gesture? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned to Novastra Defense, where we dive deep into the rivalries shaping tomorrow's world. Because sometimes, the most dangerous battles aren't the ones fought, but the ones everyone is preparing for.